Good afternoon. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Community Development and Regulatory Services Committee for today, which is January 19th. We've been joined by Council Members Cano, Quincy, Fry, and Reich. I'll just note Councilmember Warsami and his wife had a baby yesterday, and so a girl, I believe. Is that correct, guys? Yeah, sounds like a little girl. So he will understandably not be here today. This is a quorum of our committee. I'm going to start by moving the consent agenda. The consent agenda is items number 6 through 15. It includes our regular license and consumer services agenda, some license settlement conditions, and items number 7, 8, and 9, some rental license dwelling conditions on 10 and 11, a contract with Hennepin County on MFIP in 12, and allowing HCMC to acquire some property in 13, accepting grants in 14 and 15. Are there any items anyone would like to pull off of the agenda in items 6 through 15? Anyone? Seeing none, I'll move the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. We'll move on to our public hearing agenda, starting with item number 1, which is a land sale. Mr. Pettiford, welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members. The first land sale is a property at 2527 14th Avenue South, which Construction Consultants, Minneapolis Metro, would like to buy. They are proposing to build a 2,048 square foot, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, single-family house with a 2-car detached garage. The sales price is anticipated to be about $260,000. The development group has been working with Build Wealth Minnesota to help provide opportunities for large families. And so they are proposing a 4-bedroom house. I believe that they have this solved. The neighborhood has reviewed the proposal and anxiously awaits for construction to start. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. Pettiford on item number 1? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 1, which is a land sale at 2527 14th Avenue South. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Quincy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move approval of this item.
Approval has been moved. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. On to item number 2, Mr. Pettiford.
Madam Chair, item number 2 is proposing the sale of 2523 14th Avenue South, PRG. Again, it's being sold for its proposed to be sold for its full fair market value. They're proposing to build a 1,750 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single family home with a 2-car detached garage. They've been working very closely with the Phillips neighborhood on the design and the location. And they also are anxiously waiting for this to move forward. And I said Phillips, but it's actually Midtown Phillips that they've been working closely with. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. Pettiford on item number 2? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 2, which is a land sale at 2523 14th Avenue South, the PRG. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Quincy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move approval of the land sale for item number 2.
Item number 2 has been moved for approval. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. On to item number 3, Mr. Pettiford.
Madam Chair, item number 3 is proposed sale of 2446 15th Avenue South to Construction Consultants, Minneapolis Metro, Inc. Again, they're proposing a large single-family house, 2,048 square foot, 4-bedroom, 4-bath, single-family home with a 2-car detached garage. The parcel is 58 by 128. Again, they have been working with Build Wealth Minnesota to find a buyer, and I believe that they have a buyer that's ready to occupy the property. They also are proposing to move forward with 5 other proposals in Phillips as well. So they are staying quite busy.
Are there any questions for Mr. Pettiford on item number 3? Seeing none, thank you for your reports. We'll open the public hearing on item number 3, which is a land sale at 2446 15th Avenue South. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Quincy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move approval of this land sale for item number 3.
Item number 3 has been moved for approval. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to item number 4. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have an application by Juba Coffee at 2927 East Lake Street for an extended hours of operation license. They wish to extend their operating hours at their existing restaurant to 1 a.m. Sunday through Thursday and 2 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Currently in this C2 zoned area, they are allowed to be open until 10 p.m. during the week and 11 p.m. during the weekends. The previous owner of this business did hold a similar extended hours license. This is a plain restaurant license. They do not serve beverage alcohol. Juba Coffee has met with the 3rd Precinct and reviewed their security plans, and the police support those security plans as submitted. A public hearing is required for this application, and we notified all property owners and residents within 300 feet. We also notified the Longfellow Neighborhood Association and the Lake Street Council. 5 multiple family dwelling buildings were also hand posted. We received 3 responses from that notification process. One response was opposed to the application related to excessive noise created by customers late at night. We have one response in support of the application. That's from the Lake Street Council. And we received 1 neutral response from the Longfellow Community Council. They just commented that they are unable to formally support this item because their meeting schedule didn't accommodate time for them to take up this item. Based on our review of the application, they seem to meet all of our requirements, and staff is recommending that you approve this license.
Are there any questions for staff on item number 4? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 4, which is an extended hours license at 2927 East Lake Street. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move the staff recommendation forward.
On the motion to approve, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll then move on to item number 5. Ms. Roberts.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Council Chair Goodman and committee members. I'm Linda Roberts, Assistant Manager in Business Licensing. The amendments before you today accomplish business-made simple streamlining efforts for food trucks that operate in Minneapolis. The council record does detail the amendments and the staff report, so I'll just briefly summarize the highlights. First, if the amendments are passed by council, the number of food trucks that can operate in a private parking lot will be increased from 1 to 3 outside of downtown. The Minneapolis Food Council specifically requested these amendments so that food trucks could operate at farmers markets without requiring additional permits, which talks to the streamlining. Second, the amendments remove food trucks from operating on sidewalks. Currently, there are no food trucks that operate on sidewalks, and frankly, operating on sidewalks wasn't the best idea. And I can say that from experience as a staff member that was assigned and attempted to guide food trucks onto the sidewalk during railgating events. Not the greatest idea. Third, the amendments eliminate the minimum number of days that are required for food trucks to operate. And finally, the amendments clarify the Minnesota statute requirements for parking restrictions related to traffic signs and signals. The amendments do not introduce any new parking regulations. The state statute requirements are added to the amendment to simply, in an effort to enhance safety and to ease the enforcement and compliance of parking requirements that already exist in state statute. On a final note on food trucks, just because in my 16-plus career in business licensing, it seems to be the most repeated question I'm asked, and I bet you may have already been formulating this question in your head. How many food trucks do we have licensed in the city of Minneapolis? Is repeatedly asked me. So I can say we currently have 96 food trucks licensed in the city of Minneapolis. 18 of those businesses have a related brick and mortar sit-down restaurant in the city of Minneapolis. Public hearing notices were sent to all neighborhood business, Minnesota Food Truck Association, the Building Owner Management Association, or BOMA, to farmers markets, to food truck owners, and the brew pub owners on January 7th of 2016. We received one letter of support from the Minnesota Food Truck Association. I should also mention in that letter, there were certain asks to increase some permissions for hours of operation and to increase it from 3 to even more on a private parking lot. However, staff does not support increasing any additional permits at this time. We have received some detailed questions from BOMA, but did not get either a support or any other response from them. Staff is recommending approval of the amendments at this time, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Roberts? Okay, thank you for your report. There are 3 people who are signed up to speak. Can I see a show of hands if there's anyone else who wants to speak who did not sign up? Okay. Then I'm going to open the public hearing on this item, and I would ask, I'm sure the young lady from the West Broadway Association will stick to the topic. I'm going to just warn BOMA that you should speak to the issues in front of us, not what you want to see happen or what you don't like about the food trucks, but specifically to eliminating the number of days, removing the food truck operations from sidewalks, clarifying the street parking issue, and increasing the numbers to operate at farmers markets. Those are the issues in front of us, not bashing the food trucks or talking about all of the other food truck issues you don't like. Okay, I just want to be clear about that. Please state your name and address for record. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Food Council members. My name is Devon Nolan, and I am here representing today the Homegrown Minneapolis Food Council. And we support these proposed changes. These recommendations actually came out of work through the Food Council, so it makes sense. I'm also the manager for the West Broadway Farmers Market. And what we hear often from food business entrepreneurs is a need to streamline the licensing processes, several of which this is one that seems to make a lot of sense. When we talk about businesses made simple, I think it's our duty to help remove barriers for these food business entrepreneurs, and that this could be one. I like the fact that the final decision is at the discretion of the market managers as far as the number of food trucks to invite to the markets. And I also like the idea of continuing to promote economic development through food in our city. So I support this idea.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Lewis.
Madam Chair, committee members, I'm Kevin Lewis, Executive Director, BOMA Greater Minneapolis, 121 South 8th Street. And as you know, we've never been an opponent to the food trucks. In fact, we and all of my members believe that they're offering some new vitality to our area, some different options that are out there. So we would never come up here and bash food trucks. What I would like to talk about are 3 areas. In the past, I did talk about its possible impact on some of the existing restaurants tonight, but to the chairman's comments, I want to focus really on the safety aspect that's in this amendment, which we do support, and that is offering for pedestrians a bit more protection on the intersection, going from a 20 to 30 foot space that won't be occupied in the corners. And as a tenant in the TCF building, which is right on Marquette, I come out there quite frequently, and I see that when the food trucks are right up on that crosswalk, folks trying to cross or trying to peer around to see if there are any vehicles coming. So clearly in this amendment, that does address that, and we think it's a huge step in helping protect the pedestrians. We really do. Another issue that isn't necessarily contained in the amendment, but something that we hope that the city will make sure is that thorough inspections of these trucks take place.
Mr. Lewis, thorough inspections of the trucks do take place.
Right. And what my comments are is that there are accidents that do happen. And so if there's ramping up of any type of inspections, we'd really like to see that the city of Minneapolis follow through on all complete inspections. Also, the accessibility factor. And I think to my the point in this ordinance also that having those intersections a little freer will also protect the businessmen and women that are using the sidewalks to get to and from their businesses. And one last thing is that we still would like to see that the food trucks, and if the food truck coalition were here, we'd like to see as much disbursement of throughout the downtown area. For those members of ours that would love to see food trucks out, we just look to those that maybe they can broaden the area that they're representing. So with that said, BOMA does support the amendment Title 10, Chapter 188, the revisions that are in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oskarstrom.
Madam Chair and council members, thank you. I agree with Mr. Lewis and his comments.
If you wouldn't mind stating your name. And
Oh,
address.
I'm sorry. My name is Hans Oakhurst. I'm the general manager with the Baker Center. We are the property across the street from the IDS Tower along the Marquette Avenue space in between 7th and 8th Streets. We certainly have a number of food trucks that occupy our block face down there. And as Kevin Lewis had stated, we certainly see the food trucks as an exceptional amenity to downtown and appreciate their presence. We do have a very large number of trucks that populate that block face. And as such, I'd like to bring up an additional kind of emergency concern in that days where the sidewalks are at full capacity and there's very limited availability to move across that block face, we're concerned that if indeed we had an emergency event where emergency personnel were required to get in or out of the facility, that with the volume of trucks out there, that access would be greatly restricted. So we would ask that some consideration perhaps be given to a main building entry in terms of egress and entrance. So with that, otherwise, I do appreciate the ordinance as it's drafted and can find support in that.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will happily move approval.
Approval has been moved. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to our one remaining item then, which is item number 16, Downtown East Commons, additional construction. Mr. Mercer, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members. My name is Miles Mercer. I'm in the business development group at CPED, and I'm the city's project coordinator for the Downtown East Commons project. I will briefly summarize the request for action before you. Today, we're asking you to authorize amendments to existing agreements with Ryan Companies for construction of additional enhancements to the commons. We're also asking you to amend the 2016 General Appropriations Resolution to recognize $2 million in donated revenue and appropriate $2 million in expenditures. The Commons is one component of the broader Downtown East project and will be a new public green space. The city hired Hargraves Associates in early 2015 to design the Commons to be more than a basic grassy lot. The city has been working with Ryan Companies on the build out and with Green Minneapolis on a fundraising campaign. Last week, the fundraising campaign announced that it had raised a total of $10.5 million for the Commons. That amount is nearly halfway to the campaign goal of $22 million. The total includes $2 million from the Minnesota Vikings, which the City Council accepted last week, and today's request would appropriate. Success with fundraising enables us to enhance the Commons beyond a grassy lot and begins to set aside money for operations. What the project can build in the Commons has always been dependent on the pace of the private fundraising campaign. We will build what we have funds for. The build out that the project is targeting to complete this year is a scope of approximately $10.8 million. This scope includes several features from the Hargraves design, including soil and subsurf improvements already approved by City Council in the fall and that have already begun. Ordering of stone, electrical, and plumbing supplies that have long lead times and thus require prompt action. Installation of trees, plantings, interior walkways, other hardscape utilities, and furnishings. Green Minneapolis and the fundraising committee continue to work on additional pledges to fund this scope. Accounting for the set aside of operations, approximately $6.2 million more is needed to complete the $10.8 million scope. What that $10.8 million scope does not include from the Hargraves design are the 2 buildings, the terraces, and the water plaza. The project will construct those features later as funds become available and as operational experience informs their final design. Note that the staff report also responds to staff directions from the City Council action in the fall. Those staff directions related to operations and use of the Commons. I can discuss those topics further if you'd like. Staff recommends approval of the items before you, and I'd be happy to address any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Mercer on his report? Councilmember Fry, do you have a question? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mercer, I have several questions, and they're more for purposes of full transparency, public disclosure, than they are that I need answers. So first, 10.8 is the total capital cost. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Fry, 10.8 is the total capital cost, the hard construction cost that we are now targeting to build this year in the Commons.
Now, you said for us to accomplish that 10.8 in capital costs, we would need to raise an additional 6.2 million?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Fry, that is correct.
And of that 6.2 million, though, not the, it's my impression, understanding at least, that not the entirety of that is for capital. There's also approximately 25% that's then lopped off that would then pay for operations and maintenance.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Fry, that is correct. Of the 6.2, approximately 4.6 or 4.7 of that would be used for the hard costs for the capital budget, and that's the gap that we need to fund the approximately 2.8 million construction costs. And then of that 6.2, approximately 1.5 million or 25% of it would be set aside for this operating reserve.
So 4.6 additional in capital costs needs to be raised to complete, yet we, in a sense, are taking the conservative approach, which is lopping off 25% of that to pay for operation maintenance for the initial period in the interim before we figure out a long-term operations and maintenance solution.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Fry, all throughout the fundraising campaign, the goal has been to raise money to not only build the Commons, but to also help operate it and to get us in a good start to operations. So setting aside for money for operations is something that the fundraising campaign has been doing all along, and this is a continuation of that.
And one of the main purposes of this request for council action was to authorize no more than is presently raised at any given time to be doled out for construction costs.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Fry, we will only build what we have capital costs, capital dollars to build.
So in other words, if we've got $5 million in hand, we're not going to go and spend $6 million and hope that we eventually get those funds in the door.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Fry, that is correct.
So once again, this is the conservative approach in ensuring that we only spend the amounts that we presently have, and the city is not going to be on the hook for additional amounts, of course, without our approval down the road. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, I hate to say I'm more confused, and I wish you could use the overhead. It says in your report that 10.5 million has been raised, of which 2 million is for the design and project management. So there's no money for capital or operations in that. That's for design, right?
Correct.
So then you have 6.1 million from private donors for capital. We're going to spend all of that, correct? And then there's some money set aside for operating, 2.3, right? So how does that then compare to the scope of the $10.8 million budget? There's still a big chunk left to fund, isn't that correct?
Right. Madam Chair, of the three numbers you just said, I'd say the key one to focus in on is the 6.13 million. That's the capital cost. That's the hard cost construction budget. So that's the number that we need to hit 10.8. And so the difference between 10.8 and 6.3 is approximately 4.67.
I see. So 6.13 is what's been raised in hard costs.
Correct.
And in order to complete the vision without the buildings, about $4.5 million needs to be raised.
Madam Chair, we need 4.67 for the hard costs. But given that that of all the dollars that we raised in the fundraising effort, we set aside a portion of that for operations, actually means we need to raise more than that 4.67 because we need to continue to set money aside for operations.
Okay. Are there other questions for staff on this discussion item? Councilmember Fry, did you want to move approval?
Madam Chair, I would like to move approval of this item.
Okay. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. Seeing no further business before us, we are adjourned.